Hey everybody, welcome back to another Volition stream. We're doing another dev talk today where we're kind of learning about one person who works here, see what they do. I'm Josh Stinson, the video editor here at Volition, and today on the couch we've got...
I'm Jeffrey Bielawski, one of our writers.
And then over in the control room, we got Mike. He's got something to talk about. Hey Mike.
Hey Mike.
Hey everybody, let me unmute myself. Hey guys, Mike Watson here, Senior Community Developer for Volition. Some news, we announced on Tuesday that Saints Row 4 is coming to Switch. Volition's not working on that though. The port is being done by Deep Silver Fish Labs, but we're going to try to support it with streams and stuff and more information. And that comes out on the 27th of March. We'll have some pre-order details soon to share on that. There's a presidential pin set that you'll be able to get for pre-ordering. A couple of interesting things. It will ship with Gyro Controls. That'll be in the day one patch for the game. So when it comes out, there'll be Gyro Controls, which a lot of players have been asking for since SR3 Switch. And there's still a patch coming for SR3 to introduce Gyro Controls as well. And then all the performance improvements in the latest patch for SR3 will be in SR4. So it should be really good out the gate. And that's about it. I'm going to turn you back over to Josh and Jeff.
All right, thanks Mike. But yeah, for people who may have not seen our dev chats before, yeah, we're just gonna be talking here and seeing like what you do as a writer, because we've had a bunch of people on, from a bunch of different like disciplines here, but we haven't had any writers to talk about writing on for quite a while, actually.
Fair enough.
Because you were on stream before, but that was like way back for.
Oh yeah, that was way back, and that was for. Some of it was the board game night playing.
Oh yeah, the Halloween stream we did a couple years ago, which was really good actually. But yeah, I guess first thing, how long have you been working at Volition for?
I've been working mostly since 2005. There was about 9 months that I wasn't here, but other than that, yeah, 2005 would be when I first started on.
Okay,
on
so
Saints Row 1.
Yeah, I was about to say. So was it 2005? Was that pretty early into Saints Row 1, or were they animated?
About halfway through.
About halfway.
I think. Yeah,
okay. That's what I was thinking. That reminds me, I've been backing up like a ton. Like I have lots of hard drives that are extremely old, so I'm backing them all up to like our new network store, so I don't lose all this precious, really old files I've got. And like, there's some like really old like SR1 footage I found, like super old, that I hope we can show off sometime.
It looks very different than
it's super different.
SR4 ended up looking.
Yeah. Okay, so you've been here for quite a while. Then, what did you start out as here?
I started out as an intern writer under Steve Jaros, writing basically the pedestrians, all the different little characters that populate the world, guys on the street, the different gang members, anyone that's not a named character, basically.
Okay.
So writing all the different lines that you'll hear just fill out the world.
When you're writing dialogue just for NPCs and other random characters just kind of in the background, like how much direction and guidance is there for that? Like, because I know like if they're aligned to a specific gang, I'm sure there's some direction there for what they would say and act. But like, how much free reign do you have to just like write random stuff and see what like sticks?
It's a lot of free reign actually. We have different line situations for whatever's going to happen. Like is somebody going to come? Are they going to be getting robbed? Are they going to be doing some sort of action note? I know there's a lot of those on Saints Row 2.
Yeah.
But it's pretty freedom on what you got to do. I mean, a lot of times we try to talk about the world if possible, make it sound like these people actually live in the city that they're in. But what the content is, within guidelines of, obviously there's content you don't want to have people say. I know in Saints Row 1, looking back on some of those lines, not too proud of some of them, but but then again, different day and age, and nowadays, we police ourselves pretty well, but still a lot of freedom to do what we need to do.
Okay. Yeah, because I feel like in a lot of, especially open world games, if there's a lot of like dialogue written for NPCs, like if you sit around for a while, you can usually hear like a really weird, like jokey one or something like that. Did you ever sneak anything in like that in there?
There's quite a few joke lines in there. I mean, one of the things we tell people when they're writing personas is you don't need to make every line a joke, and you don't need every line to stand out. I mean, everyone knows arrow to the knee, for instance. That's perfect. That's the example we use internally all the time.
Oh yeah.
But it also makes it nice for when you do hear that joke by standing there or walking by, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, did they just say what I think they said?
Right.
It makes those stand out. It makes them a little bit more funny. You know, usually you'll get those, it might be a serious moment, then some funny thing happens, and all of a sudden you're laughing out loud, and that's kind of what we want. But we don't want you to get bored with the humor, I suppose.
Right. One question is, did you write the Purple Saint who yells Saints Row bitches?
I did not write that, I don't believe. I believe that was another one of the writers. It was Scott Leeton, I believe, wrote that.
Okay.
He was the other intern writer that started with me at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, how long were you doing that for before you, like...
That was a shorter amount of time. That was only about 5 months that I think I was doing that. Then I moved over and doing some QA.
Okay.
And was doing that for, 2.5 years or so. Mm-hmm. Something like that. Basically, yeah, QA on Saints Row 1. Then after that was they started up with doing some external projects. You know, for at the time we were under THQ. So some of the projects from the other studios QA would take on.
Yeah.
And then there was also then RFG came along, Red Faction Guerrilla, and they needed another temp writer to do similar stuff on that, and I went over and helped them out with that for I was on that for 15 months, I think.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because you know, as you tend to hone your craft in this, and it went from just writing those pedestrians to also writing some of the activity dialogue, some of the other NPCs. It's kind of progressed from there.
Right. F13 in the chat's asking, Volition are known for their witty humor. Is there any line in particular that you're proud of?
Oh my goodness. Thinking of a specific line out of the hundreds of thousands that I've probably written. I can't think of a specific line right now. But I will say probably one of my favorite things that I ever wrote was the Saints Save Christmas DLC.
Okay.
That was just unbelievably fun. Oh, okay, so yes, I can't think of the exact line, but basically in the Saints Save Christmas DLC, the bad guy in it spoke in rhyme.
Yeah.
And that was all because I decided, I'm going to try and see if I can make this rhyme. And I'm going to see whether or not this actually works when he says it. And we got him in the booth, and he started doing it, and we're like, this is fantastic, we're keeping this. So all the different rhymes that he said, and just a lot of the different jokes about various Christmas movies and that, and that was absolutely so much fun.
So you said you worked on RFG for like 15 months.
Yeah.
When did you go up from being like another temp writer to just a writer? What was the first game that you were just a writer on?
The first game that I became a full-time writer on would be, oh my goodness, was that 2000? It was in 2011.
Okay.
So I think that was Saints Row 3, or was that 4 by that point? I think it was 3 at that point.
Yeah.
I think it was still 3 at that point. Yeah. And that was after a long time of bouncing back and forth between QA and doing temp writing. Okay. And Saints Row 3, I think it was when we started doing a lot of the DLCs. So we started doing the Genki Bowl DLC, and now I'm trying to remember which ones were Saints Row 4 and which ones were Saints Row 3.
It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah. That was Saints in Space, or Gangsters in Space.
Yeah.
So it was when about the time the DLC was going on. That's about the time I became a full-time writer.
Okay. So when going up to a full-time writer, and you're probably handling the actual story and narrative and cutscenes and stuff, how different is that from just handling dialogue on its own?
Oh my goodness, completely different. I mean, the dialogue on its own, doing the pedestrian stuff, it's basically I'm given the guidelines, what the line situations are, sit at my desk all day and literally just write line after line after line.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out, 500 different ways to say grenade. I mean, that's really what it is. But when you actually start doing more of the writing, start working with the other developers, working with the missions people, working with people who are creating the activities, creating the other content, and trying to figure out, what lines do they need and what lines, what information do we need to get across in the dialogue in order to help the players out to understand what's going on, not only with the story, but also with maybe what they actually need to do in the mission. That it's very different, very different. I remember there was a long time where working here, see all these people around. I didn't know who any of them were because I never had any interaction.
Right.
Then the more you have to work with people, the more you start meeting people on the different teams, and then next project comes along, you're meeting different people who are on the teams now, and now I know practically everyone's name.
Yeah.
Still probably a few people that I maybe have never had to interact with, but it's night and day. I mean, it's very, very, very different. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how much, especially for any like dialogue or any like story events that happen that specifically are also trying to guide the player, how much back and forth is there with like gameplay designers and that stuff?
A ton, especially because the missions themselves are changing up constantly. A lot of time it's okay, they sit down with you. You're like, okay, so how does this mission work? And a lot of times that's what I'd like to do is I'd sit with them and have them walk me through the mission.
Yeah.
And say, okay, the player's going to do this next. I'm like, okay, do we need a line for that? Do we want to, is there going to be some other visual cue? And we'd write all that up, and then the mission would change next month. And we'd have to sit down, walk through it again, figure out what needs to be done there. And then sometimes, then we get feedback. Does it feel too hand-holdy? Does it feel like there's not enough information?
Right.
So it is a big back-and-forth process for a long time. You're rewriting missions constantly. There's no such thing as I sit down to write a mission, that's the last time I touch it. It is I write it, I rewrite it, I rewrite it, I rewrite it.
Yeah. Related, Matrix Vinci in the chat is asking, how late in the development of previous projects did you have to tweak dialogue before everything was locked in?
So there are a couple disciplines that tend to be, they tend to go past the deadline where things are locked.
Right.
And audio is one of them. A lot of stuff, they have to wait till things are final before audio actually can match what's going to be in game. And writing is one of them as well, especially when it comes to getting stuff recorded.
Right.
So the writing tends to happen just before the lock, because by then people know this is what it's going to be. It's not going to change now. But then after we write it, then we have to go take it out and get it recorded, which sometimes happens a lot later in the project than we'd like. But that's how we get the stuff that we need in there, and that's how it comes out so good.
Yeah. Singa asking in the chat, have you also worked on writing radio ads?
So that was one of the things on Saints Row 1, the stuff on the radio, the phone calls. If you remember the phone calls on Saints Row 1, you can call the different numbers that were on billboards, and there was usually a recorded message or something that you got. That was something that I did on Saints Row 1 and on 3 and 4. There's no radio in Red Faction Guerrilla that I remember, so not there. But yes, that is some of the stuff that we have done.
Were the radio ads like fun to work on? Because it seems like those are meatier than just like a NPC saying one line. Like you actually get to write like a full on like skit.
And a lot of times we're coming up with it. Either it might be related to like a building that's in the world. Sometimes it might be just a radio ad for something you'll never see, but just because we thought it was a good idea and funny. I mean, those can be very fun, but when you look at the scope of how much radio content there is, it usually is, oh my goodness, we have to do what? The radio ads are more interesting than writing the radio call-ins and the bumps from the DJs setting up the songs.
Yeah. Do you have to like? I mean, I guess at a certain point, maybe you just like are so familiar with the format you don't have to do this. But like back then, did you have to like listen to a lot of like awful morning radio shows to get like a feel for those bumpers, like the Zoo Crew stuff?
Luckily, nothing awful.
Okay.
The worst though is when you're a lot of times we'd listen to the music sometimes. And, everyone has their own taste in music, so where some people might like one station, I might be having to listen to it going, oh my gosh, I hate listening to this stuff. Just to get a feel, because you want to get a feel for the song sometimes to set up what's the enthusiasm or the energy going to be that the DJ is going to say when he announces the song. Is it, is it a calming song? Is it something that's going to get all riled up? So we tend to listen to the music before we write them.
Okay.
For better or worse.
Yeah. Another question. Is there an approval process for writing for things like missions? Are there certain areas in writing that are more free to create with rather than having to deliver a specific story?
There's always an approval process for everything. I mean, whether or not it's the lead writer in the project, whether or not it's the narrative director, or whether it goes all the way up to, the highest people on the project, everything always gets run by them. There's a lot of switching directions. Sometimes you'll try things out. It'll go through everything. You'll even get it recorded and in game, and then when people sit down and listen to it, they're like, this isn't working out. And then we'll have to rewrite it and re-record it. But the free to create tends to be not only the personas, because even the boss has a persona. Even Shandi and Pierce and all them, they had personas.
Yeah.
But it's also those gaps in the mission. So anytime the designer's like, okay, we have this drive that you have to do that's going to take the player, a good 60 seconds. It's like, well, then we can have a neat conversation between the two.
Yeah.
Maybe we have to talk about what's going on in the mission. Sometimes it's just let's do a little character building.
Okay.
So anytime we have time to build character, that tends to be our favorite time to write.
Also, another question. How does writing and creating work? How does a narrative director differ from a creative director or a principal writer?
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, so the creative director tends to be the one who's overseeing the entire vision for the project. So not only are we talking what the tone of the project's going to be from a writing side, but also what the tone's going to be from an audio side, what it's going to be from a visual side. Basically, it's all the different ways that the game is presented. The narrative director focuses specifically on the story and how that comes across, which is not just also the writing, that's also the cinematics for it. That's also, how does audio support, you get the sad music and a sappy scene in a movie. Well, that would be, the equivalent of being a cinematic in a game. The narrative director would have a say, no, that this music doesn't work, it doesn't give me the feeling I want to go with it. And then you have the principal writer, who's kind of like the lead writer. They're the ones who basically interface with all the higher-ups and making sure that the higher-ups understand what the story is going on, and interface with all of the other writers to make sure that we understand what the story is going to be. And then as we're writing content, they kind of get the final say just to look at everything. Because, we might have, I'm writing half the mission, somebody else is writing the other half.
Right.
Well, the lead writer is going to be the one who basically looks at both halves and says, are they working together? Because we try to do that. We try to make sure that, the various writers are talking to each other, but sometimes things slip through the cracks, and that's why you have that person kind of on top.
Yeah. I'm going to try really hard to remember a question I just thought of, but we have a bunch from the chat for us to get to. Martin's asking, as a writer, are you also in charge of coming up with mission names and or puns to use in them, or does someone else handle that?
A lot of times that is us. There are. I will give absolute props to some of the mission designers. They do, usually when they create the mission, they'll put in something temporarily.
Yeah.
And we'll tend to do a pass afterwards where we'll go through all the stuff that they have. And there have been times where they put in, we're like, nope, we can't come up with anything better than that. That's perfect. Or there are times where the content of the mission will change. We'll be like, okay, let's change that a little bit and do this pun or this reference or however we do it. But yeah, a lot of times that is the writing team, but mission designers do it occasionally as well.
Mega Freeman asking, did you write the Freckle Bitches or Friendly Fire ads?
Oh my goodness, I'm sure that I did. It was quite a while ago. So yes, there were times that I did write those, which are very interesting. I did not come up with the "You Can't Beat Our Meat." That was not me. That was I believe Steve Jaros is the one who came up with that catchphrase. So I will not take credit for it. But yes, some of those ads I absolutely did do.
And Feared Symmetry is also asking, what's your favorite and least favorite SR music stations, if you can remember?
My favorite was always the 80s stations.
Okay.
I can't even remember what they're called now, but they always had the 80s power ballad stations.
Yeah.
Those were pretty much what I had on my car every time I played.
Yeah.
My least favorite was not a huge reggae person, so I know we had a reggae station in one of them that...
Yeah,
I think that was probably SR3 with the Sons of Samdi, so...
I believe the station you said that you liked was The Mix?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That. I mean, the hard rock station is also very good, but the 80s station, I mean... that's my youth.
SR2 was Sons of Samedi was 420.
Zombie.
Samedi. Sorry.
Samedi to some
Again,
people, it's
don't
one of those
forget.
things.
Don't forget, I haven't played all of SR2 yet. We still got to do that.
Oh, kind of like our pronunciation in Agents of Mayhem of Longinus versus Longinus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
It
I
can
remember.
kind of go either way.
Yeah, working on that game, I was like, which one is it?
We did a lot of research on that. We eventually made different characters said it different ways.
Okay. The question I was thinking of is specifically, so with the character of the boss, writing dialogue for the boss, is that any different knowing that like you have a ton of different voices like for that character? Like are there some like things you got to do to try to make sure it can fit multiple different like actors?
Surprisingly, it seems like there would be, but not really.
Huh.
We actually, when we're writing the conversations, we tend to write it for one voice first, and then when
Okay.
we go back through and kind of, get rid of those lines and then just have the spaces for the other player voices, and we just kind of write whatever that boss would say, and still works, and still works with the line before it and the line after it, and I mean it's a process. It takes a while. It's one that we tend not to do till the very, very end.
Okay.
If we were trying to write all the different player voices at the same time, then I mean our heads would explode.
Yeah.
And especially with the number of changes, like I said, I mean things are changing constantly. You're
Oh,
rewriting
yeah.
missions all the time. So it's usually the very end of the project. That's one of the things that tends to come in very late in the project. Is we wait till all of the content is as locked down as possible. Then we write the other player voices and get those recorded. So that way we're not having to bring them back in for all the changes every time as well.
Right. Mega Freeman is asking, how do you decide what is the right amount of dialogue during the stuff like driving scenes? What makes it not have too little dialogue?
A lot of times for that, it comes down to it's very difficult because not only the designers will say you have X amount of time. Like, we've timed this out. You have, let's go back to the 60 seconds. 60 seconds on this drive. So, I mean, how much dialogue fits into 60 seconds?
Right.
So a lot of times it's not only once we write it, but then we're actually going to have to do like sort of our own little reading of it, whether it's to ourselves. Sometimes we're doing a table read with the other writers or with the mission designer, and someone will be there kind of, timing it out, making sure, will this fit into that space? We also will do sometimes temp recordings of stuff or work with a text-to-speech program that we put in the game so the designer can actually hear it go in game and then kind of space it out themselves. Will this be enough time? Hey, that's a little too long. You need to shorten it up. It's you kind of play with it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of tweaking. I mean, it's not only having to do rewrites based on content and the missions changing, but sometimes it's just rewrites based on, is this going to work for what we have?
Right.
So yeah.
And talking about like the amount of kind of just like process it is to get that just right, like when we've had other people on, we've had them talk about like the tools they use. I'm assuming there aren't too many tools for like writing, but like I'm sure there's got to be like some like things specifically for the writers to like, especially like organize all that stuff. Like what is it that the writers use?
Well, I am the biggest proponent of Microsoft Excel in the world.
Yeah.
I love it. That's what we've been using for a long time. The versatility of it is absolutely great for not only writing stuff, keeping track of it, but also just keeping a lot of stats, stat tracking on everything. And then we have our proprietary tool was created in-house, and that basically it kind of mimics Excel in a way, puts everything kind of in a database sort of thing, but then it also links to the various different table files that we need that the other disciplines use in the tools in order to call the specific lines or bring up, when a subtitle comes up, the name of the person, or make sure all the lines are married to the character that says them.
Right.
And that's it's not just put it all in and it's all done. It's put it all in, then make sure everything's hooked up where it needs to be hooked up to the 50 different places it needs to be hooked up.
Right. Like, because I know, like, at that point, like, audio is, like, working and making sure everything's Well, is it audio that hooks stuff up? Do the writers ever hook up like temp dialogue or anything like that?
We don't. It's usually
Okay.
the designers that do it themselves.
Okay.
Mission designers have ways where they can call the lines where they want them to be called.
Okay, yeah, because that was one of the things that always like to me personally, like I was always more shocked that in more video games, like you don't accidentally have the wrong line trigger, and like the subtitle says something different, you know, like because it's just
still
so
happens.
many.
It still happens
because it's just so much, especially because like I feel like a lot of people probably don't know that like every time like a new line happens, it's like a separate audio file, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
cutscenes especially. Like with just that sheer amount of files, it's like
Unless
at some
it's
point,
a big monologue or something,
Yeah.
like somebody has a multiple thing. But yeah, everything is a separate audio file.
Yeah.
And really, that's on QA. I mean, QA is fantastic. We tend to have people who they play through as much as they can, and they are constantly listening for what's being said, reading the subtitles. We have people who that's what they'll do towards the end of the project, or even as we're going on, is play through it with subtitles on, make sure everything's said the same way, make sure the subtitles, you know, I mean, we have people who check for the spelling and grammar. Is there, you know, a comma out of place? I mean,
Right.
It's we have some really good QA who catch some things that we're like, wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
How did I miss that?
Feared Symmetry is asking, who decides what radio sing-alongs we get?
Oh, that's a discussion. It's. I know if Steve Jaros was sitting here, he would say it was him.
Yeah.
Because he did bring up a lot of the really good stuff that we've had over the years. Was his idea, and a lot of times it's someone has an idea for a sing along, might work very well for what's the content of a mission, might work really well just for the overall theme of the game. And we'll pitch it to people like the narrative director, the creative director. Then we talk to audio. What's the feasibility of getting this song so we can do this?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's songs that's like, yeah, that would cost way too much money, so let's not do that one. Sometimes we get some absolutely golden stuff in this game. I don't even know how we do it sometimes. I really don't. But it's a group thing. I mean, anyone can suggest the songs.
Yeah.
And I think we've had some designers that have been like, hey, this song would work great. And we'd be like, that's perfect. Let's do this.
Okay.
So yeah, it could be just about anybody. I don't think there's any one person who really does it. Although when Steve was here, I know Steve came up with a lot of the good idea ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Martins is asking, which fictional character from Volition games, if any, was the biggest pain to write dialogue or story for?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, that would be stuff from Agents of Mayhem. Mm-hmm. There were some characters, and it's weird because what I would answer this is not going to be what some other writers might.
Yeah.
I could not wrap my head very well around Red Card. Mm-hmm. I could not write good dialogue for that at all. I know nothing about soccer or football.
Right.
I know. I couldn't get the voice in my head. I mean, I've heard the voice many, many times, but just for what he would actually say. And luckily at the time we had a writer who actually was very big into soccer.
Okay.
And actually, he came up with a lot of the different references and a lot of the lines that make it sound like he's calling a game most of the time.
Right.
So, different people would be different things. Some people can't wrap their heads around some characters. Some people, that character is their favorite one to write for because they just understand them at a level that others won't.
Right. Yeah, has there ever been, like, any times where you had to, like, really, like, get into deep research on, like, a specific topic so you can understand, like, how to write a character?
Yes. I mean, Agents of Mayhem, we had characters from all over the globe, so that was one where it was very, very big, like trying to understand, things that, people from Italy would say, things that German would say for Red Card, things, from Japanese. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times it's, especially when it comes to writing, like, the little colloquialisms that they might drop in their native language. What is a phrase that, someone might swear in Swedish. Mm-hmm. So that tended to be a lot where it was. A lot of it had to do with if the person's from another region or spoke another language, what exactly is going to be something that's appropriate.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we try to find somebody who spoke that language natively, or either around the office or sometimes with our localizers, and kind of ask them, hey, how would you say this? What is something that's common? Or sometimes we'd write something and really hope that it was correct, and somebody would usually correct us eventually. But yeah, that tended to be the hardest one.
Okay. Mega Freeman is asking, is there any line you wrote that you were really attached to but it never made the final cut?
Oh my goodness, I'm sure there's tons. I mean, that's one thing as a writer you got to realize is you never get attached to anything.
Okay.
Like anything at all, because it could be thrown out. Honestly, probably the thing that I'm most proud of would be bad versus evil. The entire marketing catchphrase for Agents of Mayhem.
Yeah.
Actually, it's me and one other person who both think that we were the one who came up with it. I'm fairly certain I was the first person to say it, but then again, I think he also thinks he was the first person to say it, and honestly, I can't remember which one of us said it first.
Right.
But that one really made me happy, because it just kind of clicked with people when we said that. They're like, now I understand what this is, and it made it in as part of the marketing stuff as well.
Yeah. So one thing we haven't really brought up too much yet is, on top of the writing, a lot of the writers are involved not only with just writing the actual stuff, but also working with both the voice actors and the motion capture, right?
Motion capture, no, that's on the cinematics team.
Oh, it's just cinematics team? Okay.
We will, when we write cinematics, we'll of course put in what we think is going to be happening during the scene. If there's a really important gesture that we think the character is going to make that's going to emphasize a line, that'll be in the script for the cinematic. But in the end, the motion capture is done by them. But the voice actor work that tends to be us sitting in with them, which is really fun.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, it's super fun.
Actually, we just got a question from Marissa Switch in the chat saying, do you work with voice actors to see if the lines work better on paper or in the game?
Ooh, yes. There are a lot of times, one of the reasons that we send a writer out there is because you can hire voice directors to actually work with the actors and get them to say the line.
Yeah.
Some companies, they'll just send the script over to the recording studio. The director will basically walk the people through the lines, and that's it. Reason we send writers out is specifically to make sure, does what is on the page work with what they're saying? Are they saying it in a way that's going to sound right? Does it work with the character? Or does a joke land right? Is it way too much of a tongue twister? I mean, the written word versus the spoken word tends to be very, very different.
Yeah.
We go out there specifically to make sure that everything in the end lines up, but there's been plenty of times where what sounds good when you're reading it on a page just doesn't work well when it's actually being said.
Yeah. And Megan Freeman asking, did any of the voice actors ever change the script?
We have Arif Kinchin, Pierce Washington. It's not really changing the script so much as he adds a lot of just common flair. Like when someone, I keep saying for instance, or or for him, it's just the various little things that we write a sentence sometimes we try to make it sound like the character, but it's kind of gets the critical points across. The actors usually are the ones who will add that little flair that makes it sound more natural. Adds we call them pre-life sometimes when they start a sentence like, well, I think that's what it should be. Or what is it? Pre-life, post-life. It's all the little either sighs, gestures. A lot of times when you see in the subtitles, the sigh or the cough or the laugh at the beginning.
Yeah.
A lot of times that wasn't written in. That's what they did, and we're just that made the line sound so much better, so much more natural. Let's make sure we note that in the subtitle.
Okay.
And it's a lot of them. It's them. Yeah.
And when writers go out there to work with the voice actors, it's specifically there are no voiceover studios near us, right? It's all in California?
I think there's some up in Chicago, but most of the time it's not the studio. It's more where are you going to find the biggest pool of talent?
Okay.
And of course out in the LA area, you tend to find a lot of people that are very good at doing this job. I mean, I can't even imagine some of the stuff they do. We had one actor for something had to do a scream. He literally held a scream for, I think the longest one he did was like 43 seconds.
Oh my God.
It was
Wow.
absolutely insane watching this stuff. Yeah, so they're great. But that's one of the reasons we tend to go out to LA is because that's where you're going to find a lot of the people who can do this and do it very, very well.
Yeah. Now, when you go out there to like work with the voice actors, like how long are you out there for?
It kind of depends on how much content we have to record.
Okay.
We usually tend to go out there for a week or two at a time, and a lot of times it's like, hey, we have a session coming up. We know it's going to be a week long. Do we have a week's worth of content to record?
Yeah.
Or sometimes we'll be like, hey, is there anything that we know is not final yet, but we're going to be out there with, X, Y, and Z voice actors. Let's see whether or not we can just get them to do some of this stuff so we can hear it in game. Decide whether or not it's going to work before they change things. So yeah, it's usually a week or two at a time, but in total, I think most of our games, like you're probably out there for a grand total of, I would say 8 or 9 weeks, possibly more. I mean, Agents of Mayhem, we were out there, I think a total of like 12 weeks.
Okay.
Throughout the project, it's a lot of stuff to do.
I'm curious. Did Agents of Mayhem have more dialogue than a Saints Row game did, just because of the amount of characters?
Surprisingly, it didn't.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and one of the reasons for that is also if you look at the cutscenes, a lot of the cutscenes didn't have the agents because of the technology to make the agents say different things for the way we were doing cutscenes. Right. It didn't work very well. So if you look, there's actually only one cutscene where the agents literally, I think, say one word, and each one of them got to say that.
Okay.
But like in something like a Saints Row game, you have all the different player voices who have to say all the different things for all the different cutscenes, and that tends to blow up how much recording and line count.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Matrix Vinging asking, isn't Volition more humane with their voice talent, though, in terms of running them ragged?
We have very much tried to be. It's actually something that we... I know there was the voice actor strike a few years ago, and that was one of the big points with them was making sure that people who are called in for doing these combat characters that are going to be screaming and shouting grenade 500 times. They don't go up. They're not being kept there for too long where it starts wrecking their voice.
Right.
And that's one of the things that luckily some of the voice directors that we worked with out there, they told us that very early on. You really don't want to keep people beyond 2 hours, and even if you can start hearing it in their voice, that means it's probably really hurting them. That means maybe cut it as short as you can. If you maybe don't get everything this one, book them for another session. So we try to be very, very good about that. We've heard horror stories. I mean, some of the voice actors we've talked to, we've heard about the things that have happened to them, and it upsets us that some people do that to them. I mean, they're doing a job. Mm-hmm. You don't want to abuse someone doing a job for you.
Totally. Oh man, there's one more voice actor thing. So that before the stream started, we were briefly talking about some other things, and Mike brought up the story of how you met Mike.
Oh yes, yes.
So tell this story.
So Idle Ninja, that man, very big Saints Row fan. We were at the time doing. My goodness, this was Saints Row 4, right? Or was this 3? This is 4. Yeah, I'm not crazy. Yeah, it was 4. Okay, just want to make sure I'm not crazy here. And very much. He's a fan of Saints Row 2. Saints Row 3, of course, for a lot of fans, went in a very different direction. It felt very different to the characters. Mm-hmm. And in Saints Row 4, we very specifically were trying to mend that bridge and that gap. So we're like, okay, we don't know if we're doing that very well. Let's bring out a huge fan of the game to come and play an earlier copy of the build. He happened to live at the time, I think it was close, not far from LA. I won't say where he lived. Okay, I didn't know if you want me to say. He lived in Vegas, so, easier way to get to LA. We're like, we're going to be out there for a recording session. let's bring a copy of the build and have them stay out there for a few days and play.
Yeah.
And see whether or not, this felt like we were doing at least some job, hopefully a good job, at marrying the two different games. And man, I remember going out there, we had no idea if this was going to be a good idea.
Yeah.
We were very scared that this is going to either be the greatest idea we've ever had or the worst idea we've ever had. And luckily, it was absolutely fantastic. He got to see some of the early stuff, give us a lot of really good feedback on the characters and how we're treating them in this, how they were treated in 2, how they were treated in 3, what things would work better, what things were working very well with what we had.
Yeah.
And it was an absolutely fabulous time. Was it 3 days? Was it 3 days total, I think? 3 or 4, yeah.
3 days. I love beating you guys and hanging out.
It was so much fun. Going out to dinner with them and everything. You got to meet a lot of the cast. I remember that.
I felt so bad. I should probably just join you on the couch.
Yeah, just get on the couch for a second here, since we're talking about this.
Let's see. I'll scoot over so you can get a little
I'll
bit.
I'll have to zoom the camera out a bit here.
Oh, sure.
Okay, that works too, yeah.
Yeah, here, let me...
And shock yourself.
Yeah, and I get a shock every time. Whoa, everyone's going to see a bit more of the studio there for a second, but...
It's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I remember, we had you sitting basically in one of the rooms while we were doing voice recording. Mm-hmm. But you, I think, had a headset on, so you were listening more to the game.
Right, yeah.
And just playing through some of the early stuff. Like, I don't remember all the missions that we had at the time.
Everything. I finished the game completely.
Oh, that's right.
Wow.
That was late in the project.
A lot of the voice acting was text-to-speech. Like with the boss and stuff, and
hence why we were there to record it. Yeah,
there was a lot of gray box stuff too, like for the first mission, the opening mission. The thing that struck me the most though about going out there was how nice you guys were. Like, no, it was you, it was Alex Mejia and Steve Jaros.
Yep.
And I had a picture in my mind of how Volition worked, because at the time as a studio, I think. It felt, as a fan, it felt very aloof, right? There wasn't a lot of communication with fans. I always kind of saw Volition as a bunch of mad geniuses kind of just doing their own thing, but without a lot of community interaction kind of thing. But I had a mental picture of what it was going to be like, and I was so just blown away by how friendly you guys were and how nice you were, and being able to talk about some of the deep community concerns I had at the time.
Which was great for us to hear, yes.
And I felt so bad. I felt I'm being such a negative person, right? Saying how much I hated certain decisions, and I was really raw with my feedback on the games and where I thought, Volition succeeded and where they failed, for community. And Steve Jaros told me something that I'll never forget. He told me that I shouldn't worry about being negative about certain games because he felt like he was part of the group who gave birth to all the games, and the fact that I loved and identified Saints Row 2 so much just meant just as much, even if I didn't like some of his other children, I guess.
Great advice, yeah.
Yeah, and that helped me, and also helped me when I started working here with how I approached my own feedback internally. That I shouldn't hold things back. I should be very open and honest and raw about what I think is working and what I think didn't.
You definitely don't want everyone that's telling you everything you're doing is great. I mean,
yeah,
because it's not. There's no possible way. Everything we're going to do, whether you're a designer, an audio person, writer, cinematics, even programmers. I mean, the way that they make the game work. No one's going to be perfect, and we need to hear it so we can correct it, or so we can understand why we made that decision. I mean, sometimes we might not correct it the way someone wants, but we need to understand why we're not doing that, so that when it comes up, we can explain it.
Do you remember when you were recording footage of me for the Dev Diary, and I was talking about GAT, and I started crying?
Oh no!
Yeah, you guys hit me with that question about what was the biggest moment.
I do remember that. Yep.
You were filming me, and I started talking about oh shit, I'm gonna start crying.
Oh no!
But no, it was like what meant the most to me, right? And it was the two things. It was new Shawnee versus old Shawnee, and it felt like a kind of a healing thing.
That was
with both versions of the characters, and it was Gat, like the Return of Gat. What the boys are back in town.
Yeah.
That got me, man.
The new Shawnee versus old Shawnee, that mission, which I still feel bad because I know there was one SKU that didn't get that mission in it. But that was another one. That's one that I actually did write, and that was one of the ones that I really enjoyed writing because it was a huge thing, not only for the fans, but even internally, trying to look at these two characters. You know, it's the same character, but they felt like two very different people. And how do you justify that? And you know, what is that road? That's exactly what I mean. Like, we need to hear the feedback so we can figure out why did we make that decision, how did we get there, and what's the reason? And that's what I wanted that whole mission to convey was how did these two characters come about, and how are these two characters the same person, and how do we reconcile that?
I often think back to that time. When I got to see it and being like the first like fan, right, to play the game without being spoiled by marketing. So like the Gat reveal was like holy shit, and the Shawnee reveal was like holy shit. Like it was nothing was spoiled for me. I went in with fresh eyes for everything, and I often like thought to myself, gosh, I wish like everyone could have played it with those surprises.
You said that. I remember you actually said that to us. Like those surprises were huge. Yeah.
I said, do not ruin this.
Yeah.
And of course we ruined it.
I know. Sadly, we don't have the control over marketing.
Right.
But no. I remember you saying that and that was one of the things that we were really looking forward to you in particular, as the fan, seeing and playing for the first time. And are you going to have the response that we want our fans to have when they play the game? And sure enough, like, I guess we just got really lucky with the fact that we did. So, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
It was awesome. The other memory I have from that time was getting to meet Keith David.
Yes. Yeah. Keith David's really fun to work with. He really is. He's a great guy.
I kept my fanboy like ism in check until I met Keith David, and then I just fanboyed out. I'm like, oh, Captain Anderson.
That game was particularly fun because he's not only was playing Julie, he came back and did some Julius Little stuff for us, but he was also playing Keith David. So him playing himself and having to do the two different characters was just a real blast.
I remember too, he was doing the Julius lines that's when he brought me into the booth, and there was some discussion about like his voice is Keith David versus his voice is Julius, and like how to approach those. And I like busted out with some stupid fanboy thing, like I said something like, "Yeah, that's it. That's like perfect Julius," or something like that, right? And like everyone kind of turned and looked at me, and I'm like, "Oops, sorry."
Oh, jeez.
The other thing was I couldn't stop smiling when Keith David, like when I met him, and he. I'll never forget this either. He said, "Are you all right, son?" I'm like trying to be all right. I'm so excited.
Man.
He's a really fun guy to work with. He really is.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Very, very friendly.
Anyways, I'll let you get back to it. I'm going to go back to moderating, but
right.
I just thought that was some
thanks,
fun
man.
stories.
Thanks for coming to the couch.
Yeah, thanks for walking about 4 feet to the couch.
One final thing, though, like the interacting with you and Steve and Alex, I'd said this before, but that was when I first thought, maybe I would want to work for Volition. Because you guys were so nice and like down to earth and so different from how I pictured Volition developers to be. It really changed how I thought about like the potential to actually work here. So you're part of that reason why I decided to accept the offer, the part-time offer, and then the full-time gig here. It's because of you
and meeting you out there was one of the reasons that when I first saw you walk into the lobby, because I had no idea you were coming, and I remember coming up the elevator, or I was out in the lobby, and you come up the elevator, I'm just like, Mike, what are you doing? Like it was awesome. It was really cool. So.
Awesome.
And he's like, oh yeah, I'm coming for this position. I was like, yeah. So.
No regrets. It's been a fantastic journey.
Thanks,
you, sir.
Mike. Thank you so much.
Speaking of that whole time and like working with the voice actors and stuff, those Dev Diaries were filmed like at that same time. I think Alex was working on those same time. Like, working with the voice actors and stuff, is there like extra stuff like you have to clear before voice actors? Like even if you have them to do acting for your game,
Yes.
is that like a completely separate thing?
It is a completely separate
So I'm
thing.
going to reframe the camera.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'll keep talking while you reframe the camera then. Yeah, it is a completely separate thing. You actually have to basically clear it through their agency, ask them, are they going to be comfortable with it? Usually a separate contracts involved. There might be basically kind of requirements, hey, book them for this amount of time, but you can only do voice recording for X amount of time, but then save some of that time basically that they're booked for the actual interview. Some people like they wish they could do it like right then and on the spot. They'd be like, sure, let's totally do this, but like I should probably clear it with my agent first.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think we've ever had anyone basically turn us down for doing it. Like most people are very excited to talk about it. I mean, it's their work as much as our work when it comes to these characters, and usually, they want people to like them. They want to be remembered for the voice that they did, in X, Y, and Z game. So, them talking about it tends to just be happy and fun and beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, it's you were saying this before we started the stream, but you said that like despite even when you were first starting to work with voice actors, you never been like super starstruck.
I met quite a few people, even people that sometimes weren't maybe working on our project, but like you're at the recruiting studio, they're there for some other project, and you meet them, and I kept my cool. Until I met Ashley Birch.
Okay.
And then I don't think I fangirled out right to her. It was more like Steve came by later. I'm like, what, was that Ashley Birch? Really? Was that? Like, yeah. So that was fun. And then since then I've worked with her several times and hung out with her even outside of the recording session once. So then they're just people.
Yeah. It's I would like the first time I ever interacted with voice actors was specifically when we did all of the voice actor streams.
That was so much fun.
For Ages of Mayhem, which was really cool that we were able to get so many of the voice actors to like be on and talk about it and see the game and stuff. But probably the first time I was just like, oh God, I'm talking to this person? Really? Was like, I think it was the first or second stream we did with the voice actors, and it was specifically Hardtack's voice actor, because like,
T.C. Carson.
Yeah, I totally recognize his voice, and like, I had to like call him, like I had his phone number, I had to call him, and then it was just like, because he was in a different time zone, it was just like the stream was about to start, and it was just like, oh, he was still on the highway, and there was like a traffic jam, because he thought it was like an hour or so earlier, and I was just like, I remember, when I called him right before the stream, just go like, it's okay if you come in a bit late, we'll just, call you in like half an hour in or whatever. I remember like, talking to him and just like addressing him by his first name like he's a friend I had known forever, and then I hung up and I was just like, what am I doing? God. I remember I forget what
they don't mind that though.
Yeah, I forget what writers were on the couch then. It might have been Jason Blair, but I remember he was just like, wow, you just go.
No, and he's great. I mean, for those that don't know, I mean, not only was he Hardtack in AOM, but he was, I think it was Big Tony in Saints Row 1, and then came back for, I think he had a spot in one of the flashback missions in Saints Row 4.
Yeah.
And then also, most people know him as the voice of Kratos.
Oh yeah.
So
that was the main reason where I was just like, even like if you hadn't told me who it was, I just hear him say like 3 words, it's like, oh shit, okay, it's this. Whoa.
And also an excellent singer and musician.
Oh yeah, yeah. I believe on that stream we talked to him about that stuff a little bit. Also, by the way, Matrix Vinci in the chat says you are not just a people. You're an interstitial dialogue wrangler.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Can I get that on my business card?
Yeah, I mean...
Hold on.
I could...
That's fantastic.
I could go change your title.
Yeah, totally. I want my tag changed to that now. That's fantastic.
And also, Fear Symmetry says to please let you know that they're fanning out over you in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Really, there's no reason. My wife doesn't even fan out over me.
There's one more thing I want to ask you that we ask a lot of the people who are on for dev chat streams, and that's just like working here, what is like an average day for you here? Do you have an average day, or does it change a lot?
In writing, there almost is no average day.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of the other disciplines actually do have what could be considered an average day. For us, it can be, we have a lot of missions to get through, a lot of people to talk with, and make sure we're getting the content out there. But if those missions currently aren't being worked on, or there's a downtime, sometimes we'll have persona work to do. Sometimes we'll just be researching for something coming up. Sometimes we're just going to be collecting all the data that we have and keeping it together. I mean, for me right now, I'm doing a lot of the tool side work.
Okay.
So it's a lot of, making sure that all the stuff is in our tools so that way it will be played in the game. And also just wrangling all the scripts. I mean, by the end of it, between all the different persona scripts for all those NPCs and all the different named characters, and then the mission scripts, activity scripts,
right?
All the the stuff, the radio scripts. A lot of that, someone has to keep track of it and make sure that it's all what's in there needs to be in there, and what's hasn't been recorded yet. So we know that, so we know we have to record it. So a lot of stuff that I do that. So there's a lot of hats you wear. I mean, people think, we're just sitting there writing words all the time. No, I mean, we're also thinking about, what is the big story? Talking about what could this mission be about? What stuff could we include to make the story, match or make the visuals and the gameplay match what's in the story. Talking about, what voice actors to get. Talking about what music might do we have in our heads, or what stuff do we want cinematics to do when they're doing the mocap for stuff. So it's kind of a lot. It feels like.
And you mentioned like working on the tool side, like the specifically those tools. Like, what are they being used for? Is it just more organizational stuff?
It's more organizational stuff in some way. Like the big thing I'm very happy I just did was I figured out a way to have Excel put out a report of all the scripts that we have in a folder.
Oh wow.
People are like, that sounds really boring to people. You have no idea how excited I was. I was practically dancing at my desk. But it's also putting it into the tools that tie into the rest of the game. Making sure that the subtitles are going to show up right, because what we wrote on our script is in game correctly. Making sure that the persona is going to actually have all the different lines attached to it, so that way when somebody calls a line and plays it, it'll play.
Oh, so persona is like the thing that's like attached to like one specific NPC or whatever that contains all the stuff they can say?
Correct.
Basically?
Correct.
Okay, interesting.
Think of that as their bank of lines.
Okay.
Yeah. And also what we call just a specific character. Their persona is their generic dialogue.
Yeah. Matrix Vinging asking, because we've brought this up in the past, that we have like our own little like motion capture room now. Has that affected writing at all?
It I don't know if it's affected. It's affected writing in the fact that it allows our cinematics team and our animation team to kind of give us early visuals of what we might be thinking. So if we write like a cinematic, they'll take it in there, they'll act it out, and we'll kind of see how does this play out. What might work, what might not. What are the different shots that we can do? Is there anything that we're calling out for them to do that they can't fit in the screen at the time? So that has really helped, and it's also really helped if someone has a really funny idea for an animation or something that someone can do. We talk to them, and maybe they'll go down to that studio, give it a try.
Yeah.
Hopefully without hurting themselves.
The Manny is asking, does writing the English dialogue require take into account how there might be idioms that are really hard to translate to other languages?
We don't do that as well as we probably should. A lot of times we write the English dialogue first, and we're going to write that basically how we feel these characters are going to act. And then a lot of times that comes up in the localization later, especially, a lot of different languages have male-female pronouns that tend to be very important.
Yep.
That we have a fully customizable player voice in the Saints Row games, for instance.
Yeah.
How exactly, do you write? We always have to refer to them as them, as they. It's very gender neutral, specifically because we have no idea what the player is going to choose as their boss.
Right.
So that tends to be a problem. And the idioms, we get the questions back from the localizers, and we'll try to explain to them what we mean. And sometimes they'll kind of insert what their sorry, getting on a horse. They'll kind of insert what work in their culture.
Okay. Because that's a topic specifically I've been really interested in. Like, there's a guy on Twitter named Clyde Mandolin who is like, he does lots of localization work. He's a dude who did the fan translation for Mother 3 on the Game Boy Advance. Yeah, but he writes books, like entire hardcover books you could just buy that just like analyzes one game and like how it's been localized from like Japanese English, because he mainly does like Japanese localizations and stuff. But yeah, if like people are interested in that type of stuff, like check him out. And like,
that's neat.
There's actually a decent amount of stuff out there, specifically talking about like how certain like colloquialisms and stuff from like our culture like super hard to move into another and stuff.
That's very true.
Megan Freeman asking, how do you write lines that are like by default like in a different language, like specifically any of the Korean dialogue in AOM?
So specifically for the Korean dialogue, we wrote the lines ourselves, and then we sent them off to translators to translate them. And then we worked with them on any of those questions they had about, either how does the gender stuff work, what does, this particular phrase mean, and then they basically took them, and we had them all actually recorded overseas. So yeah, we didn't do any of the recordings ourselves. We had someone we worked with basically set up a recording studio out there, get a voice director for them, and basically we recorded them with all Korean actors.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a longer process. We don't have pretty much, once we send it out, there's not much we can do. And yeah, for that one in particular was that. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of the Saints Row games, you'll hear a lot more Spanish. I mean, a lot of times we have people in studio who luckily, who that is their native language. So we'll run it by them and be like, hey, what we have on here, is that correct? How would you say it? Is the spelling right? Yeah. And a lot of times the voice actors themselves. I mean, we try to get people who know the language, who at least have an understanding of it, to be able to tell us what you guys have here. That's not how it would be said. That's not how it's said in our household. Or that's not how my brother would say it.
Right. Something else I'm curious about. So one, you've been doing a lot of writing for our games for a while. Have you written for other things outside of video games?
Outside of video games, not really, no.
Okay, because that was one big thing I was going to ask if you had, is just like, I mean, you probably actually can still answer this anyways. Just how different is writing for a video game compared to anything else? Book, TV, whatever.
I mean, I've written short stories before. A lot of that stuff was back in college, because I actually did get a creative writing degree.
Okay.
And yeah, that's nothing like this. This is more akin to writing plays. I mean, that's where Steve Jaros. That's where what he was studying in school before he came on here was he was studying script writing for plays, because it's all about the dialogue. It's about the characters. It's about sounding as natural as possible and making sure that these feel like believable people. Okay. So that's different than I'm not great at writing the cinematics, considering a lot of that you need to put in like here's the scene setup, here's all this other information, and I like writing dialogue more than anything. I like thinking about how is this person going to sound when they say it.
Okay. Now at the end of the stream, I ask a lot of people like, what they do outside of the studio, what games they've been playing and stuff. But more specifically, do you ever play any games just to like specifically like study their writing?
Occasionally, and there's some actually that I need to do right now, but I haven't. I know a lot of. Let's see. There was Sunset Overdrive was a big one, considering they were probably one of the games that came out that was really close in tone to what Saints Row was. So I remember that when that game came out, the entire writing team, we sat around, we played that for a few days. Okay. And there are some that people absolutely like. We'll even hear when we're out and recording VO out in LA. The actors themselves would be like, "You guys really should look at this game here or this game here," because the writing on it was really impressive. And I'm trying to remember the name. There's one that recently came out. I think it came out back in November that I still need to play because I just heard so many good things about it. So yeah, occasionally we will do that. We haven't had time recently, sadly.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll pull some games in. We'll sit down. We'll play through some missions, kind of hear what they're doing, and see what works and what might not work for what we're doing.
Okay. And yeah, just outside that, are you playing any games right now?
I just finished Jedi Fallen Order about a month ago.
Okay.
That was so much fun.
Yeah, that's
Frustrating combat sometimes, but my goodness, was the story fantastic, and
Yeah.
the game was just like when the combat worked. Oh my goodness, was it so much good? So fun.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get around it to playing that. I'm unfortunately at that point where it's just like having like a full-time job and also doing other things
yeah.
outside of that. It's just like, oops, I can't keep up with every game that isn't comes out anymore. So there's some games that unfortunately fall by the wayside now.
And
But
Star Trek Online.
oh, you play Star Trek Online?
I play Star Trek Online, which right now, I mean, with all the different Star Trek shows coming out, it's a good time to be
Oh
a
God,
Trekkie.
yeah, there is. I guess there is a lot of Star Trek
Yeah,
stuff
and
happening right now.
they're working actually. Cryptic is actually working with the people making those shows, and a lot of that stuff makes
okay.
it into the game. There's even been some things in some of the shows that came from that game.
Huh. Oh God, that reminds me. This was several years ago now, and I can't remember the name of the show. But did you ever hear about? There was a show on Sci-Fi. Yeah.
Yes, I know.
You know
I
what that
know what
is?
you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it, but yes, I actually watched the show. I never played the game.
Yeah.
But I'd heard about that.
Yeah,
That's
for
gonna
people.
kill me now.
Yeah, for people who don't know, there was a sci-fi show that's basically an episode of the TV show to happen, and then there was plot that would happen, and like the MMO they released at the same time, and then you do that plot, and then that plot would somehow feed into the next episode. That seems like just logistics wise, that sounds like really hard to pull
I
off.
think it started with an A. I can't remember. No, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. Gosh,
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
My roommate worked on it. Hang on.
Oh, what?
Oh, we got my
Oh,
Mike's looking for
seriously?
it.
Oh, man.
I can't.
I feel like that was like a 2014 game or something.
It was a while ago. Yeah.
It was a Tryon did it.
I know that's gonna
Mike's gonna
drive
find
me
it.
nuts.
Yeah, because it's interesting to see when people try to have like games writing like mixed with other forms of media, because that just seems like
the whole
very hard to do.
transmedia. That's
Oh yeah, transmedia. Yeah.
or board games. Like there's an Agents of Mayhem board game out. There's,
Yeah.
Yep. They're action figure. I mean, Overwatch and all them. They have so many different things. So.
Oh.
Was it Defiance?
Defiance?
Yes, Defiance.
Defiance,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. That is exactly it.
Speaking of the AOM board game, was there like writing that had to be done for that board game?
There was a little bit.
Okay.
Our lead writer, Jason Scott, was the one helping them out at the time with that. So there was some story stuff in there. They really did a good job getting the characters across, getting even just all the different mechanics of the game. Very, very good job with that. It's a very rules heavy game. But if you really like that sort of thing, and you really like
I've never
strategy mechanic games like that, I mean, it's a pretty fun game.
Yeah, I've never been. Never got a chance to like actually play it when like those test units were brought in or whatever. I missed out on that, but just like seeing all the pieces and stuff, this looked like a super hardcore. Like, oh man, you're gonna hunker down. This is your afternoon.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Which
once
certainly
you
has
learn
an
the
appeal to
rules,
it.
it'll go faster and everything.
Oh, yeah,
but,
sure.
But learning those rules takes a while. But it feels like playing the game. Because it's so close.
Like it was just visually, that game is like super impressive looking to me, because like I'm not a huge board game person, but I feel like I've seen enough people, especially around here, a lot of people way into board games, and like, you know, I see a lot of games, it's like, okay, that looks like a board game, and I see that thing and it's like, that's like 3 board games just layer wise.
Almost literally, because it's 3D pieces that stack in buildings.
Which is just really nuts to me. It's really impressive. But yeah, are there any other hobbies you do outside of that?
Board games would be the other big one. Yeah,
right.
I've always been big into that. Me and my brothers, we would always play anything that our parents had when we were younger, and then as games kept coming out and getting more and more complex, yet creative and fun and different. I've always been big into board games.
Yeah, and I mean, especially the past few years, it feels like there's like a really big boom with that
Oh,
stuff,
Kickstarter
right?
especially,
Yeah,
like-
especially with Kickstarter.
I can't even tell you how many games I've kickstarted.
Yeah.
Probably
There's
shouldn't have, but
oh man, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I don't play a ton of board games, but there's one I have that like went out of print for a long time. I think it's easy to get now, but every couple of years they would have like a really small print run. That was it was basically a massive choose your own adventure book tied in with a
Arabian
board.
Nights?
Yeah, Arabian Secrets of the Arabian Nights or something like that.
there's a lot. There's actually a lot of games now. That's actually a big trend I'm seeing with a lot of the board games are ones where there's a story and there's a lot of what the players do is where you go in the story and a huge booklet of where it goes.
Yeah, I'm gonna let's see if I can find this really quick actually because it's
'Cause
like
Arabian,
that.
that doesn't sound familiar to
It's
me, but
it's such a Tales of the Arabian Nights is what it's
Really?
called. Yeah, it is. It's like an '80s board game. They've kind of altered it a bit over the over the couple
yes.
decades, but I believe you can still get it. Really big board. It's like a 6 to 8 player thing or something. Where basically like you start off in Baghdad and you get like this huge deck of cards, and whatever card you get is like your goal in life and your adventure. You got to go out and try to accomplish that, and whoever does that and also reaches to Baghdad first wins. But like the entire game is like it's very rule heavy, and the game is also entirely just like it could be a lot quicker, more automated for a PC game, but I feel like if it were an electronic version, you would completely miss the point because the point of the game is entirely you have this it's like 1,800 pages or something, and there's all these things that like kind of like there's this big matrice, like all these matrices. It's like okay, you got this and this, it lines up. This is the adventure you get for this turn. Somebody has that book, they read it, ask you, what are you going to do? Skill checks, you say what you're going to do based on there's a separate set of matrices or the decisions you can do for that specific story.
oh my god, that sounds
And
like so much fun. How have I never heard of this?
It's a crazy game, and it's like, at a certain point, it's like no one cares who actually wins. It's just like what crazy thing is going to happen to you.
Those are the best games.
Because like I have played that game so many times, and I have never gone through all the stories in that book.
There's a lot of games out there like that now. Like Gloomhaven's a really big one.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that one.
Most people say is one of the best board games out there, and it is absolutely fantastic. Very unique mechanics to it, but it's huge. Choose your own, like where you're going in the story, what comes next.
Yeah.
There's other ones that are coming out, Kickstarters that I've backed that done it. Was it Tainted Grail? That's one.
Oh yeah, I have heard of that
good,
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's got a huge book that's coming with it. I can't
Yeah.
wait till I get that one. That one I haven't gotten that one yet. But it's
how
coming.
much room in your house is taken up by board games?
Oh my goodness!
Is there just a room for board games?
Shelves and shelves.
Okay.
We're actually looking for a new place now. That luckily we're looking for a place where I can have a dedicated board game room to myself.
We're just
I'm
like leaking into other rooms
very
right now.
excited about that. Thank you to my wife.
But yeah, I have a copy at home. Are there ever board game nights here or anything like that?
There are. We actually have a board game room. Actually, that's
Right. Yeah, they built it that way.
That's one of the things that I helped get started here was we had a lot of board gamers who would book conference rooms over lunch, and the problem is some of these board games take a while.
Yep.
So it's like lunchtime's over and somebody has a meeting in here. Quick, pack it all up, and you're only halfway through a game.
Yeah.
So we got some space, and the studio was gracious enough to give us some space. We got, just some basic tables, so we don't have the conference room tables with the holes in the middle for wires that you're constantly losing pieces down.
Yeah.
And now we have some shelves with a bunch of board games on. People play over lunch.
Okay, cool.
Tables you can leave stuff out on. There may even be a copy of the Agents of Mayhem board game that is currently out for playing.
Nice. God, maybe I'll have to try and bring that game and see if people are interested, just because it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. There's like an entire side game they designed just for if you end up in jail, where you're stuck in one space over and over every turn.
A side game.
It's basic. It's essentially like there's an entire like set of the book and decisions that is just for if you're in jail. And there's like 12 different types of jailers you get, and they all have their own stories and like their own sets of decisions.
If you have it, bring it in. I would love to see this.
And like just how like the best story I can remember is that there is some like lovesick jailer or something, where if you do the right decisions, you can basically give him a pep talk to like propose to a lady, and then like it's like, oh, I married her and we're gonna name her firstborn after you. You know what? You get out of jail for free.
Nice.
And it's
nice.
that game. I love that game.
All right, now I gotta go find this. This sounds great. Add it to my huge catalog of games that I just haven't gotten around to playing yet.
It's a big box. It's really big, and it's almost entirely the book. I mean, the board is really, it's like this, but...
Yeah, but that folds up nice.
Yeah, it folds up, but the book is huge and weighs a couple pounds. But,
those are the best, the ones where you can kill somebody if you hit them too hard.
Oh, yeah, totally. But, yeah, thanks for being on and talk about all the writing and stuff. It's
absolutely great.
just personally, I don't know, I just play a lot of narrative-heavy games, so I'm always like super interested in the process of writing for games, just because it seems so crazy and different compared to like anything else you write for.
It very much seems to be.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for being on.
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me on.
And thanks everybody for watching too. If you want to see our earlier streams, if you missed out, we have tons of dev talks like this. We have tons of earlier streams from previous years where we like looked at old builds of Saints Row games and had people come on to talk about what it was like working on them, all that stuff. You can see all of those on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/VolitionTube. And yeah, we stream every Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific. And again, I'm Josh Stinson, the video editor here. And on the couch today, we had...
Jeffrey Bielawski, writer.
And we had Mike monitoring the chat as always. Thanks, Mike. And we will see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.